All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Call, and today my guest is Tony Bynum. And Tony, you're a photographer. You've been and filmer. Do you do you do film work as well? I think I came across you like 7 years ago or so, and 6 years ago, Instagram. I saw a lot of your photography work, but I wanted to have you as a guest on the podcast because I wanted to get into this commercial filming permit, the laws and the history here. And a number of people reached out to me and said, you need to talk to Tony. Strangers on Instagram, some people I know within the industry, some people who have received citations and fines for filming without permits. So as I dug into this and started to learn more about it, you and I actually stumbled across paths just the other day through Instagram, and here we are. So can you give folks a little introduction and kind of set some parameters over what this discussion is about?
Sure. Well, yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. And yeah, even my comment on Instagram the other day might have been a little bit harsh, but I do tend to, when it comes to permitting, I do kind of like to jump right to the issue for me. Like there's a lot of variables in this discussion, or can be, and in the history of it even. And so where I sort of was introduced to the whole issue was as a member of the Professional Outdoor Media Association, and on the board of directors. I'm now the president. And for the past, say, 15 years, I suppose, we've been, as an organization, participating in developing the discussion and crafting the discussion, and even helping build some legislation to address filming on public lands. And what I mean by that is specifically filming on federal public lands, BLM lands, and U.S. Forest Service lands, and to some extent, national parks. But that, even though is where this ruling we're going to discuss came from, the bulk of our audiences, because we're in the outdoors, hunting and fishing, is largely public lands not associated with national parks. Hunting in national parks is very limited. There is some, but for the most part, we're always talking about Forest Service and BLM land. And so over the course of, that many 15, 20 years, we've always tried to figure out a way to make it easier on our members and on people who film hunts. They film themselves on public lands. They go fishing, they recreate, whatever it is. We've always tried to help figure out a way to make it easier. And so our discussion will be basically just around that federal part.
Yep.
There are lots of permits. I mean, you can go down, if you're in LA, like they probably have a permit to walk down the street, there's rules all over the place. So I don't think you should take our discussion and sort of overlay it across, multiple jurisdictions. However, I believe based on what we're going to discuss and what the judge said, there might be some implications here all the way down. But for our purposes, let's just talk about public lands and federal public lands. And then so anyway, I think that's a good enough introduction. I've been personally involved in filming, for I'd say 15 years. Filming's not my thing per se. I'm a still photographer, but I don't advertise myself as being a filmer or producer or cameraman in that regard. Although I think as often as I shoot stills, I'm somehow roped into rolling on video.
Right.
That's another podcast. But anyway, that's where we're at. And right now I'm in Montana, where it's about 20 below and supposed to get a little colder. And I'm glad that you're making this connection, and we're going to talk about this issue. It's fun.
Let me ask you, people can follow you. What's a good way to get a hold of you? They want to look up your work and reach out, DM, message you. Is there do you have a landing page, Instagram?
Yeah, I mean the basic. If you Googled my name, Google's really good. If you just Google Tony Bynum and then click the image option, you can get a good taste of a good feel for what I do. But I'm on Instagram as Hunt Photos, Twitter as Tony Bynum. I love Twitter because it's sort of been one of those places where I can talk about real things and real media with people who are, I think, engaged in it. It's not
Right.
like Instagram in that way. So
Hmm.
so Twitter's cool because you can find information. It's up to date. It's like breaking news. It's like things that are happening in real life are happening on Twitter, and you don't get a lot of just photography and that kind of thing on there. So I can
Right.
be found there, but Instagram, I post a little bit here and there. I have a Facebook page. I don't recommend that for people. I'm just not big on it anymore.
Yeah.
Takes up too
I'll
much time.
I'll include some links there in the
Yeah.
description field of the video. People can go to our website, briancall.com, and find that. I think
Yep.
it's you do beautiful work.
Thanks.
So I wanted to start out by giving my audience a little context for the discussion by describing my own experience with commercial filming laws. My audience is aware that because they've seen a lot of my content come down that used to be online for them to view, a lot of my film work has been removed due to these commercial film laws. And haven't really gone into the details here much publicly on how this all came about, but I think it's a good discussion to have, and then it can lay some groundwork for us to build on for the rest of the podcast. So I started the podcast like 2014, 15. I started making some films. I put one into the Full Draw Film Tour way back in 2015. And I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just playing with a camera. I had a day job. I was, making six figures at as a compliance manager at a insurance company, and the films did great. And then I started a podcast, and it did great. And then fast forward to 2017, a year into this, and I was just a nobody, kind of doing it on the side as a hobby. But now, then it became like, no, I've started a brand. I'm making money from this endeavor. What do I need to do to make sure I'm legal? And so I met with I went to the special uses permit office in Idaho, spoke to the gal behind the counter there, and we discussed like what is required of me? What are the commercial film laws that exist? And what does it mean? What is constituted as commercial? So we had a number of meetings, conference calls, and email exchanges. And through that discussion and that process, she said, okay, here's the definition for what it means to be commercial, and here's what it means to be non-commercial. And basically what came down to was, she said, if you're not going to do any direct monetization of your film, then this would be deemed not commercial, and you don't need to worry about commercial film permits and commercial film laws. You can roll forward as a regular person that's just filming as a hobby, that wants to just share their information, as long as you don't do any direct monetization of your content. So that would mean I don't collect any money for YouTube views. My content isn't sold. It's not in a movie theater where I sell tickets. That's not, there's no DVDs, there's no downloads, there's nothing behind a paywall. There's just no revenue stream. There's no links back to my website where I sell products, or another website. There's no links to Amazon, no affiliate links for my partners, and I'm not paid by sponsors to produce film. So as I went forward, I just put a couple videos out a year. Just I'd do a hunt, and I'd play around with it, and I'd make a film and put it out there. And then fast forward a few years, and I started putting out more film content. Now, I didn't monetize any of it directly. I followed all those rules. But enough people apparently complained that I had filmed, I'm gritty, I'm this, and enough people had complained that I filmed without a permit, that I rose to the scrutiny of the Forest Service. And this September, while I was out hunting elk, some agents came to my house, some federal special agents came to the house and knocked on the door. My kids looked through the window, saw that they weren't people they recognized in black suits, and they said, "Dad's not home, Mom's not home. We're not answering the door." That's the rule. I'm somewhat of a public figure in a small way, but and some people know where I live. It's just we just don't do that. So they didn't answer the door. A little bit later, they go outside to play, ride their bikes, and the agents were sitting outside in a car on the road, and they got out and approached my kids. And then they said, "Kids, where's your dad?" And they're like,
Wow.
Who are you? And they said, "We're with Forest Management," which is a nondescript description of nothing. And they asked for where I was at, and the kids are like, "He's gone. Come back later when he's home." And so then they left. I got a citation in the mail a couple weeks later that said, we were notified about a little over a year ago, that there was a potential issue with you filming on public lands and without permits, and we're giving you a citation. We tried to reach out to you before we issued this citation for the past 3 weeks, but you're not here, and you need to pay these fines and take all your content down. So I immediately called. I was a little upset because you've been sitting on this citation for a year. You come to me in September when I'm obviously out elk hunting. It's what I do for a living. I'm in the process of already beginning filming for 2020. It bothered me. And also that there was never a discussion with me. They didn't know about the meetings I had in 2017. They didn't know about all the things I had done to comply with this non-commercial standpoint. Some fellows wrote on my Instagram channel, "Brian, you could have easily published your content had you not been so interested in making money off of it. You were perfectly legal to film all you want as long as you don't commercialize it. You chose to commercialize it, so you deserve to pay the fees." What he doesn't know is that I actually chose not to commercialize it, just as he said. I actually did all those steps, unlike hundreds and thousands of pages on YouTube and others who film without permits on a day-to-day basis. So I was upset. I was upset because I had tried to comply. I'd left a lot of money on the table, by the way, over all these years by having no link backs to my income or direct income. Now, I met with them. I had a meeting with the officer who issued the citation. We had a great conversation. We talked for a couple hours. We both recorded the conversation. And we kind of went back and forth, and he was actually quite he's like, "You know what? I didn't know about all the things you'd done. I didn't know about this email. I didn't know you had spoken to the special permits individual. I didn't know that all these content wasn't monetized. I assumed you were getting paid for all of this stuff that you're not getting paid. I thought you were sponsored and paid for." So all my contracts state I'm paid for so many podcast episodes per year. I'm required to do a little bit of one-on-one podcasting with some of those sponsors, which we do on occasion, but otherwise that's it. That's how my pay sometimes for the sponsor for the podcast is tied to the number of podcast downloads. There's no mention of film content. Film content is just my hobby. It's kind of what I do on the side. Now, as I explained to the officer, there's no question in my mind that my film content got more and more popular, and that indirectly it benefited me in the form of my podcast and other spaces. But that is also true for anyone who films on public land and shares their content. Everyone has, generally, most people have some form of indirect benefit from that. So I was like, I said, look, I followed her guidance on whether it's direct or indirect benefit from the film. And he said, well, she was just wrong. And it doesn't matter whether it's direct or indirect. And it doesn't matter whether you intentionally or unintentionally make money from your film. We deem it commercial. So we went back and forth. They decided that because I had these meetings and because I had done my due diligence in trying to directly demonetize any of my content, the U.S. Forest Service decided to dismiss the charges. And but they said from now on, I need to have all the permits needed to film. Okay. So the current situation for me is now it's time for me to remove content that did not have the proper permits, although that seems unfair because I would have happily gotten those permits had I known. And going forward, I need to have all the proper permits for filming. Now, I was happy to comply. I'm like, that's great. I'll move forward that direction. Then I got involved in the permit process and the fees and all of the stuff. Now, the fees you and I talked about, I'm in a position right now where I can handle the fees. You know, they're expensive for what I do, especially when I I do a day by day series of a hunt and it's 10 days long and you get charged per day of filming. That's brutal. But it's the process that is untenable. The permit process, the days required of advance notice to get your permit, the restrictions around getting your permit. I'd like to get into that in a little bit, but once I delved into the process of obtaining a permit to film, I realized that things were really broken. And that's why as I kind of want to get into that with you, like, what is it? What are commercial film laws? Okay. How did they come to be? What's the historical objective of them? Why were they brought forward in the first place? And what is the permit process today for someone like you, someone like me, to get a permit? What are the restrictions? What are the costs, and so on? I'd like to kind of have you maybe go into that, as you've been in the trenches on this for a long time.
Yeah, I think we can sum it up pretty quick. It's a pretty short history, important no less, but short. So I'm not an attorney. You know, I'm not trying to give anybody advice in any of this show. Like, the whole purpose here is just sort of some open dialogue. I do have a number of years of experience with regulations, writing regulations, interpreting regulations, enforcing regulations, reviewing regulations. So I have a relationship sort of between, you know, how does all this work together as a puzzle, bunch of pieces coming together to create a puzzle or one story. And I've tried to analyze the permits, the whole outdoor film permit on public lands through that lens, to both having experience in filming, writing, filling out all the forms, planning, all of those things, and then through this regulatory history that I have. And so basically, historically, you know, the agencies, the federal agencies, would charge permit fees for a couple of reasons. One, to collect a fee to basically cover the cost of production, right? So cost of production, meaning if the agency has to put out certain amount of resources in order to manage the permit program, in order to be on site to make sure that you're doing what you said you're going to do. I mean, all of the things associated with how much does it cost the Forest Service, the Park Service, the BLM to administer the program? That's one part of it. The other part, however, was basically, can we make money at this? Is this a revenue stream? And I think that, from what I can tell, is where the big issues lie. I mean, what is commercial, and what is, you know, how do we determine who's commercial? But so far as the permit's concerned, I mean, they just determine that based on your application. So you fill it out. It asks all kinds of questions. Where are you going to be and when and what are you doing? And like, they're very complicated sometimes. And a lot of it doesn't apply. The whole system was built purely to address the physical activities of filming a motion picture, like a major motion picture, right? These guys, when this was done 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, updated around 2000, Congress said, look, we need to develop a better solution here. And we want all the federal agencies to get together and figure out a fee structure for this. How are we going to implement this program? Because we've already told you have to do it. So let's get out there and figure out.
And I think you and I and most outdoorsmen agree. Yeah. We want this to be regulated. We don't want, like, one of the specific films that this judge brought up in her recent ruling on these laws was Dances with Wolves and Star Wars, stating that, you know, the original intent of the law, or the reason it really came on the books, was it as a result of handling these major motion pictures from Hollywood in the form of Dances with Wolves, Star Wars. And I think we all agree, everyone that loves public lands, that loves hunting, that we should have things in place to manage all of the impacts, and that a fair return for your use of those resources makes sense as well. So I just wanted to set that record out there. And we're not trying to say that we should just go unregulated at all, but I think we're just kind of going over the original objective and stating that let's talk about what makes better sense, because it's a little.
Well, I mean, I think it almost goes without saying that, I mean, based on what we care about, obviously, is healthy public lands, healthy environment, wildlife, that sort of thing. Like, we're sort of in the game of working towards, a future for us to operate in, right? So we don't want to wreck it. On the other hand, the film permit program was meant to help sort of offset and mitigate impacts associated with a lot of people doing a lot of stuff. Motion pictures have a lot of vehicles, they have a lot of people, a lot of demands, and they also tend to move the public in certain directions. So, for example, if you've got 2 semis and 100 people and a catering truck and a bunch of film guys, and you got all this equipment, which, in 2020 was enormous. Like, that's how you did things. You moved an entire village around to make a film.
Right.
And you displaced public people, which was unfair in a sense as well. So it was a way to try to get their arms around that whole, go ahead.
And I would interject here that when I got involved to get my first film permit, and I started to try to be within compliance, you can tell just by the permit process that it is not designed
the
for
application.
A single dude with the camera. Yeah, the application process. It is not designed at all to handle the situation I bring to public lands. It's there for a totally different. It asks, is this a sex-related film? Is this pornography that you're creating? Do you have, like, how many trailers are you bringing? Where are the movie stars going to stay?
Yeah.
How many outhouses? What's your bathroom plan? How many vehicles are going to be parked out there? Just it goes on and on and on. And then just finding the right person to contact is a nightmare, because every piece of property, every type of public land, BLM, if it butts up to national forest, you have to get a separate permit for each piece of land. The whole thing becomes, and then it's also around how many days you have to say, I'm going to be here from this day to this day. How many are pre-production days, post-production days, and actual production days? None of this makes sense if you're just going to take a camera and film a hunt you're on. And you when you hunt, you have access to an entire unit or a state. And your tag allows you to bounce around. Well, I have to tell them within like a 5-mile radius in some places that I'm going to hunt only right there. Mm-hmm. And anyone who hunts knows, well, what if there's no game there? Well, I can't film anywhere else. In order to do that, I will have had to purchase multiple permits for multiple 5-mile increments across different types of land. And by the time all is said and done, I'm $5,000 into preparing for permits in 3 different places for a 10-day window of hunts, just in case. And I don't get a refund. Some states are cool. And that's the thing, is every state's so different. Mm-hmm. Some states are like, hey, we'll give you a permit for 10 days. If you only film for 3, we're only going to charge you for 3. Mm-hmm. Other states are, you're going to pay for 10 days. And if you don't show up at all, you're still paying those 10 days. If you tag out on day 1, you're still prepaying for those 10 days. What would be awful is you have a 13-day hunt window, but you're like, I'm going to film for 8 days, but you don't tag out. And then you're like, well, I'm going to hunt 2 or 3 more days. You've just invested 8 days of filming into this project. You're this close to pulling off, an achievement, a tag, whatever. And now you get there and it's like, no, you cannot go and say, I want to extend it, because you have to give the state 90 days notice or 4 weeks notice every time you want a permit. And so it's just a nightmare process. You can't really win. And then if you're a vlogger, let's say you're a person living out of your van. There's this example was brought up many times. A couple popular on YouTube, they built a little van. They live in it. They toured all over South America. COVID hit, and they had to come back to the United States. Now they're here. They're continuing to film and vlog their life each day. And the federal government came in and said, you don't have permits to do this. You have to shut down your production. You can't film in these places. And these are people who just film on a daily basis. They make a couple $1,000s a month from their YouTube channel and anything that they sell from their content. They tell people how to build out vans, where to travel, RV places to visit. They just share knowledge and information through their experience that people value. And by doing that, people support their channel maybe through Patreon or through a paid subscription, or they do it through buying items they recommend. They follow along with their stories. But in order to satisfy the law, they'd need to spend around $40,000 or $50,000 in permits to do what they do, so they can make $20,000 a year. It's not tenable. It's not doable by a small business to be able to. And our whole world now consists of that, right? You got smartphones, people that vlog all the time, share stuff to their Instagram story, that travel. Technically, all of those people are breaking the law. And there's what I think is interesting is there's this misconception I felt like from some people in my audience that some 99% of the people out there are actually in compliance with the law, and there's a few rogue individuals breaking it. When the actual reverse is true, 99% of the people breaking the law do so without consequence, and just a small fraction of the community has the law actually applied to them. So, yeah. For example, if you just look at on YouTube, if you look at the Jeep pages, if you're into Jeep stuff, you have all these YouTube pages. I wrote down like 100 of them, of pages where dudes go out to Moab and they Jeep all the time, and they go out on public land trails and they Jeep and they Jeep and they Jeep, and they sell all kinds of Jeep mods and additions and stuff for their Jeeps and all of that. They don't have film permits for that. Some of their pages have been up for 7 to 10 years, have internet followings or followings that dwarf my own, and they sell a lot of Jeep product through their adventures, their adventure filmmaking, and their YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. They are breaking the law. I know they don't have permits, and I know this because it's impossible to get permits in the way that they film. They're like, tomorrow we might go here, or if it snows, we're going to hit these mountains over here. That tells me right there they don't have a permit, because it's impossible to pay for all of these, like on a whim, I'm going to go here. If you're a ski bum and you're filming your stuff on public land, cross-country skiing, or you're a thru hiker, you can't just say, this week I'm going to go here, next week I might go there. You have to notify the government 90 days in advance where you're going to be. So not only is the process and stuff not feasible for especially outdoor adventure filmmakers and vloggers, it's also, the fees are extraordinary for that type of activity. And so it's conducive. The current structure does support, I think, your Hollywood motion picture type impact. But even then, I'm not happy with it. But it certainly doesn't support the way the modern world is working.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as far as the history and where we're at today, the film, the purpose for which these were created, again, monetizing it, providing a revenue to the government, covering expenses for the agencies, all of that. That's just, they're following the rule, like the law, right? So they were trying to do what they were told to do. On the other hand, it got a little complicated because for all the reasons you just described, and in fact, I've always looked at it as this is a technology issue more than anything else. Like, I mean, this would not be an issue if it weren't for technology. Why I say that is because 20 years ago, you needed a crew to film. Now you don't. You can take 4K and even higher resolution video images with, something you can carry around in your pocket. That was impossible 20 years ago. Like, there was no way to produce the content that's today being produced by just some kid
True.
20 years ago without a
Yeah.
crew. So
Well, and not just produce, like if you captured that content, you had no platform really to put it on because the law was developed 3 years before YouTube was invented and 7 years before
sure.
the first smartphone.
Yeah, it's
And that's
purely technology driven. I mean,
true. And that's
all
what
of
the
this stuff
judge,
happens so fast. And so in trying, I think the agencies, I'm not here to defend anybody, the agencies in particular even, but I think looking at it in context, though, and why this was happening and why, as you point out, we need to continue at least with probably some regulatory measure. I'm not sure how far we need to go or how that is. And we aren't into the law, or excuse me, the recent decision yet, which we probably should talk a little bit about. But the issue is, to me, what we have to do is respect the system, right? There is a system, the government, the permits, that sort of thing. We all want to sort of operate, right? As a business anyway. We want to operate within the rules and regulations. We don't want to get in trouble. We don't want to cause problems. Like, just let's talk about this and make it work. And even that was impossible. So from a business standpoint, it was really hard. Like you described everything that happens. You put out, you try to get a permit, you can't find the person. You get a permit going, you fill out the application, you send in your $150, you're waiting around. It might take a week, it might take a month. I mean, in some cases, these permits have to be signed all the way to the top of their agency. Like if you go to a location, it's like, oh, so they got to go get the forest supervisor from, 300 miles away. And to sign the permit.
One of the areas needed like 20 signatures.
Yeah.
It needed the biologist, it needed the botanist, it needed the geologist, and it went on and until the park ranger. And I'm like, oh my gosh, really? And they're like, yeah, it's going to be a month or two before we get back to you. That's insane.
And look, there's reasons for those things. And I'm not disputing that. It is complicated. It takes a lot of time. There's no doubt about it, whether it's a hunting film or whether it's a hiking film. I mean, let's face it, we're all sort of in the same boat. I don't think hunting is any more important or less, for example, in terms of this issue than hiking or climbing or camping. Like we're all in the same boat. Mm-hmm. So looking at it from the standpoint of like, we want to be able to operate, we're small time guys, we're a couple of people out filming. This law never was intended to address that. It was always intended to this law, meaning the laws for permitting on public lands for filming, were always meant to deal with large groups of people. That's just the way it was. So 2015 rolls around, all of a sudden the iPhone's out and everybody's changing the way they behave. I mean, everybody's literally filming everything they do and taking a photo of it while they're on public lands. So yeah, it's super frustrating.
And I love following some of these pages, right? Like I'm way into Jeeps.
Yeah.
I'm way into the overland community doing what they do. I love the big wall climber dudes and following their daily Instagram posts as they're climbing some crazy wall and they're like 1,000 feet above the ground. I love following that stuff, but they can't share that stuff under the current structure because they can't get the permits and stuff to be conducive to that lifestyle and that business that they're trying to run. And I feel like the way it's right now, Tony, it's really a rich man's game. I mean, thankfully, Gritty's making a decent amount of money. Not a lot. I'm pretty poor, actually, but I have enough money that I can barely afford permits and then break even this year. Now, if you had gone back 5 years ago and if they had said, Brian, you can't post any of this stuff, I would never have even started making films because I would make zero. $25 on video views on YouTube and no partners or sponsors, and yet I have to incur a $2,000 permit for this hunt, and I want to do 4 of them, $8,000, and I make no money. That becomes a rich man's activity.
Well, maybe it is, but it doesn't apply to public land or private land. So like, I mean, true. That's always been an issue. So part of my business has been to determine where I need to film, where I need to photograph, and what permits I need. And so there have been many times when I've just set up situations where either through a producer, through my own connections mostly, or through some various relationships where I just choose not to go to public lands. I mean, and that's a separate issue in a sense too, where, I enjoy the fact that I can go to places, and this is where knowledge of location really comes in, and relationships. I can go to places that are fantastic and film for a month, put up a tent.
Yeah.
I can do anything I want. It's on private land. So that's partly
That's what.
my business decision, was to move away from that whole public debate and discussion and regulations. And like, I was always involved because of POMA and the Professional Outdoor
Yeah.
Media Association, because of my business. But I tended to look towards, even this fall I did photo shoots on public lands, on private lands, because and those were based on relationships and my producer's relationships. Like, we figured it out, right? We can go
Right.
somewhere else.
Right.
And that way I can move quick. I can get a call, and 2 weeks later we can be filming,
Well,
rolling photos, doing everything we need on private land.
I had a number of people reach out and say, Brian, I see lots of hunt shows, lots of them, and they obviously figured out how to deal with this process to film their hunts on public lands. And my response was, no, they didn't. They just moved their operations to private property. You're mistaken. You are assuming these are filmed on public land. They're not. There are influencers, for example, like my friend Jason Matzinger. He's like, Brian, I have moved a lot of my production to private property because the permit process is so onerous and expensive and risky. And I don't blame him. In fact, many of the people who film have decided, I'm going to do more international hunts. I'm going to go to New Zealand, and I'm going to go to some of these other places where I can do these things without the same level of scrutiny as I do here. They're like, I'm going to do leases, and I'm going to do private property. And again, I can take the same 20 grand I'm spending on permits to hunt public land, and I can do some damn good private land tags and private land hunts. But that's not what I'm passionate about. I want to empower people to love and appreciate public lands, and I want to promote the use of public lands, and I want to show people what can be done on public land with a blue collar income and a very low budget. So it's, for me, I'm disappointed because I do feel pressured or pushed by the government to abandon the promotion of public lands and public to move into it's a much more financially sound plan to just abandon it and go to private property.
Yeah. Well, that, like I said, it's a business. For me,
Decision.
it was a business.
Well, and I will say this, like in Montana, they said, Brian, here's your permit. By the way, you can't film any fire. None.
Can't film fire.
Can't film fire unless it's in an authorized fire ring, like at a park. Also, I can't film fire unless I have a fire. I could bring a fire mat with me, which is like a 4x8 sheet of material that I have to put under my fire. And when I'm backpacked 7 miles into the wilderness, into the outdoors, it doesn't backcountry. It doesn't matter. And so I have to come home and film fire in the backyard and plug that into the movie. Randy Newberg's like, yeah, just film it on private property. If I want to add a drone shot, now I've got to go to a private property place and film the drone footage to put into my film because I'm not allowed to use a drone on a bunch of these places and hunts. So I'm going through their hoops. I'm doing what they say, but it's important to me that I include. Now, it's not illegal for me to have a fire. It's not illegal for me as a person out there enjoying the outdoors to have a fire. It's just not legal for me to film it. Because why? Because they said so. I don't quite understand the logic between
I think it brings up. I mean, if we're just in the context still of sort of the past, like we're still talking a little bit about what are permits like, what it's been like. The fact that it's so arbitrary and in some cases complicated that you can't really get a baseline. You can go one place and it's one thing, one way. So one piece of Forest Service, one person, one permit. I mean, I got some permits a couple years ago to do some filming in Montana, and it was BLM on one side of the road and Forest Service on the other. And the BLM guy that I worked with, and I know these people already, the BLM people were like, you know, they used their discretion. They talked to me about what I was doing and said like, well, we're not going to require you get a permit for that. And I'm like, well, I mean, it kind of loosely falls under the guidelines of commercial production, right? I mean, it does. And they're just like, well, yeah, but we don't see that we're going to go through that whole process of trying to go through a permit application. What you've told us is you're going to be this far from the road. You're not going to be burning the place down. I mean, like, it makes no sense for us to put that effort into it. And so they just said, you don't need a permit for what you're doing. On the other side of the road, the Forest Service, their people were moving their headquarters, so their local headquarters offices, from one Forest Service area to another. And they just didn't have anybody that could deal with it for 6 months. Like, they literally are out. There is no one even there, right?
Same here. That happened to me too. They said it's COVID, so we're not going to get back to you for 4 months. I couldn't get a permit for that area. I had to go hunt a different unit.
Yeah. So that's not workable either. So, and then you may have a situation where you go somewhere and, like you said, they lock you down to something, and there's not really a way, and it's just so different everywhere you go. Even if let's say the system were level in a sense that we knew how much we were going to pay. Going forward, the idea of administering such a complicated sort of set of circumstances, I think, is troublesome no matter what, whether we're talking about yesterday or next month. It's going to be a big deal. It's going to have to get figured out. And I mean, maybe this is a segue into talking about this judge's ruling. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit, or kind of where we're at now, because it is a huge decision. It is a major decision in my view, and it impacts everybody filming on public lands. And I think instead of talking about the way things sort of in the current or in the past, we can talk about the future, because things have changed. Yeah. I mean, even by the day. So it's very important that we set the stage. I think it's troublesome. I think we should talk a little bit about what did the judge say? What are we going to do going forward? And what are the things we need to look out for? And as an organization of humans who film outdoors, a loose organization, right? Like, we're all in the same boat, but we're doing our own thing. A group, what are we going to do to help facilitate something that works, right? Yeah. Or at least has a chance of working, because the thing we had obviously wasn't working.
Right. Well, I'll go into the judge's ruling. So the story goes like this. And this is interesting because, as I mentioned it on my Instagram page, the judge ruled that basically the commercial filming law in national parks was unconstitutional. Now, that got me under some fire from some people that are like, I think we just threw the baby out with the bathwater. We don't want just no regulation. And I don't think that's what the judge was saying. So I'll get into, I think she was saying it's just that the way it's written now, we got to fix it. So the judge basically, and for those who don't know, there was a ruling 2 weeks ago, I think, or so now, where a judge ruled that filming in a national park was unconstitutional. And the story is that Gordon M. Price was fined. He was making a film, an indie film. He showed it at a restaurant or something. It got a little notoriety, made the rounds. The feds got wind of it. Which department was it? Is it the U.S.
Interior Department with
Department of Interior?
Service. Yeah,
Park Service. So they hear about it and they say, okay, you can't do this. You didn't have a permit. You're done. So he fought the charges. They dropped the charges. His standing, or the reason he fought the charges, was on the basis that it was unconstitutional because it suppressed his ability to have free expression and to say what he thought. Well, the government dropped that. He went back and sued them in civil court, and they said you don't have standing because you didn't actually end up having any problems. He said, well, going forward, I have to buy permits, so it does impact me. So they said the court deemed that he did have standing. He goes into court, they fight it, and the judge determined that he was correct. So Price Gordon Price filed a civil complaint with the court challenging the facial constitutionality of commercial filming law. And the judge ruled in favor of Price, stating that the requirements in the law are unconstitutional under the First Amendment. And she entered a permanent injunction, aka no fines can be issued for not having a permit at this time for national parks, for filming in a national park. And the judge ruled that this content-based law, which she was saying content-based law in terms of it's being a speech law, the commercial filming law must be narrowly tailored to government interest to pass constitutional muster. The judge said the government's actual interest is in protecting the lands and conservation interests, but the actual permitting process under the existing law is not narrowly tailored to that government interest. So she's basically saying, look, every American, every citizen has the right to freedom of expression, freedom of speech. She said film is a form of speech. And as a government, the way that the current permit process is in place, it is infringing upon an individual's right for that freedom of speech. And she was saying that if you're going to infringe on your right and my right to say and do and promote the things that we believe in and that we value in our lives, if you're going to infringe upon that, if the government's going to do that, they need to do it. It needs to be justifiable. It needs to be narrowly defined to meet the objective that has been set forth. It can't be broad sweeping. And so she said that it was over-inclusive is what the law is. She said the law has to take into account personnel and equipment impact on public lands. Mm-hmm. The judge continued with this example. If Gordon Price was in a park with himself and a single handheld camera, and he did not impact the park, but his content generated a profit, he is required to have a permit based on the current law. But if Gordon had a large amount of film equipment and personnel with him and the content was newsworthy under the current structure of law, he would not need a film permit for that. The judge said the under and over inclusivity problem with the difference in commercial filming from other filming, she said that it's a defect of the statute, of the law, and ensured that this made the law unconstitutional for First Amendment purposes. Thus, she said, this law is over-inclusive. The law does not pass constitutional muster, and it needs to be more narrowly tailored to that government interest. The judge stated that this law has a chilling effect on all national park visitors who simply want to film with their smartphones or small equipment, share their vacations and their adventures with people. They don't know if they are going to be in trouble or not be in trouble. And so she said the feds are now required to go back to the drawing board and rewrite the law, the permit law, so that it doesn't infringe upon freedom of expression or any type of people who are filming, whether for commercial purposes or not for commercial purposes. Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about over-inclusivity, it's funny, I had a great discussion with my friend Jack Carr yesterday. He's an ex-Navy SEAL, author of a number of spy thriller books that are out. And he gifted me this book right here, and it's called 3 Felonies a Day. And it says How the Feds Target the Innocent. It's a kind of a chilling book. But he basically said that based on our current laws, that there are laws on the books that on average, the average American breaks 3 felonies a day just by the course of their life, because the laws are so inclusive and broad sweeping that technically they can be used by the government to against you. And that the laws, her point was the laws need to be narrowly defined so they meet these objectives. So for example, if for context, let's say a judge comes along. You're in Montana, correct?
Yes.
So you're in Montana, and legislature declares that from now on, you're not allowed to have a pistol. No gun for you. No handgun for you. No more. They're gone. Okay. Now they can put that law in place, and they can enforce that law, right? But we all know that violates the Second Amendment. That law would be unconstitutional. But until someone challenges that law it's likely to be enforced, right? And in order to stop the government from overreaching, an individual or a group of individuals would need to seek redress in a court of law and say, I'm sorry, but this law is unconstitutional. It doesn't meet constitutional muster. You can't infringe upon my Second Amendment right to have a gun. I suspect that if they did that in Montana, most people would not give their gun to the government. And most people would say, good on you, because that violates your Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. And eventually the law would get overturned by a judge just like this by saying it overreaches. So this judge is saying, look, the film permit process, yes, we need one. The original intent was to deal with, she mentioned specifically in her ruling, Star Wars and Dances with Wolves. The way it is today, it overreaches. The way it's written currently, if any individual goes out and records footage on public land and publishes that footage, and that person makes even 1 cent, $1, and they do so with intention or not intention, or if they do it with direct monetization from the video or indirect monetization from the video, they are in violation of the law. They have broken the law and can be cited, fined, and so forth. That's a very, very broad, sweeping law.
Well, it's broader than that. And I'll just correct that because a little bit. It's broader than that because it's not that you would make the dollar. It's that it is commercial. So you could lose money and still violate the law. It's not making money that triggers it. Like you could go out and film it and lose $1,000 or $100,000. You're still violating the law.
Right.
So they don't care whether you're making money or not. It's not about if you're making it. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely right.
Yeah,
right.
Because then you could just run around and lose money all the time and film shit, and then you know what I'm saying. So really, it's the intent and the definition of commercial.
Yeah, you mentioned
what
that
is
yesterday.
it that you're doing and why are you there? That's what they're trying to get at. And then the second part of that is, what are the impacts?
Yeah, and the judge basically said the way that the law is currently framed, it infringes on Americans' rights to freely express themselves, and the law isn't narrowly defined to meet constitutional muster. So
right, because they're charging you, but they're not charging the guy standing next to you.
Correct, and
for the same impact.
So when I went to let's talk about a little bit about my experience. When I sat down to have my discussion with the special agent from the U.S. Forest Service, the first thing that the agent told me was, Brian, anyone on the planet is free to film in wilderness to their heart's content and publish it, just as long as it's not commercial. They can do it. Anyone can do it. So my buddy can go out with his dad and do a father-son hunt in wilderness, film it to his heart's content, and then publish it and share it. And as long as it's not commercial, he's completely legal. So naturally, my question was, well, okay, tell me what I need to do to be non-commercial. I'll comply. What do I need to do? You just tell me. Like, I thought I was being non-commercial before, but do I need a separate YouTube page? Do I need to make a nonprofit agency and stick it in there? Like, I mean, I've done everything I can to avoid making any direct income from it. So what else do I need to do? And he said, well, you're Brian Call. So you can never be non-commercial. That to me wasn't really an answer. It's like, wait a minute. So I asked him, well, what happens if Michael Jordan wants to go on a father-son hunt in the wilderness, or just go for a hike or a rafting trip, and he films it, shares it on his social media page? Was he needing a permit? And they're like, well, was he wearing Nike? I mean, maybe, like, probably. I'm like, so you're saying if anyone has any popularity, or if they're in the hunting industry, there's no way they can make anything non-commercial. And he said, correct, because if you put out content, you become more popular, and that increase in popularity increases your value in the marketplace, and then you make money indirectly from that popularity. Now, I'm like, okay, this is over-inclusive, just like the judge said. The law overreaches. You could apply that logic to anyone you feel like. It needs to be narrowly defined. What does commercial mean? It can't just mean popular. That's too much power for the federal government to then come in, and if they don't like what Tony Bynum says, if they don't like your let's say pro-hunting views or an individual, these laws can be weaponized to shut you down, because they can use that law in a like this example with 3 felonies a day. The law is too inclusive, and so therefore it can be used to suppress your freedom of expression. And when that happens, we're talking about these things happen often. This is how laws are challenged. When they don't meet constitutional muster, this sort of thing happens. And the judge is saying, look, you have to really, really define your rules. If you're going to infringe, if you're going to say people can't speak, it needs to be justifiable. And the way your law is written right now, it's just not. Yeah. And so she put that injunction in place, a permanent injunction. And let me describe that. That means that the government cannot require someone to have a permit right now to film in a national park. Now, that's a little intense, because what if Hollywood rolls in and starts filming Revenant 2, in Yellowstone? You know what I mean?
It's literally, what you're talking about is real. Like, it's true from the standpoint of what she said or what the ruling means. Like, literally, just like, you can go online right now, you can dig it up, and the National Park Service basically said, it's like, we are not accepting any permit applications because we're not issuing permits and we're not charging fees. There is no program. It is essentially defunct right now. Now, they didn't say what they were going to do about it in the future. They just said, there's nothing here. Now, but let's be careful about this, because this is where I think where when I made a comment to you on your Instagram saying, hey, wait a minute, mate, like, you're getting a little out there. And I think she got, it's far be it from me to be smarter than a judge in this case, but I think she's probably gone a little too far in a sense. She went as far as she needed to with the issues that she was dealt, sort of like the cards she was dealt. I think she's got it kind of wrong, in that, even when I say she got it wrong, I mean, going forward, there will be a time, at least in the National Park Service, on national park lands and in other Interior Department lands, wildlife and BLM, where they're not going to have a permit program. That's the world we're in right now, like today. Mm-hmm. Not so with the Forest Service, although they are investigating. I just had a call with Forest Service Permit Office this morning. They're dealing with it. Like, they're trying to figure out what they're going to do right now. Park Service Interior has already said, we don't have a program. There's no fee.
But I will say this. Let me interject just for a second, because, Tony, do you really, like, the problem is this isn't enforced already. Like, I think there's a misconception that people think that, oh no, there's no permit process, so now there's going to be this huge influx of people breaking the law. And I'm not sure that's true, because when I brought these hundreds of YouTube pages that don't follow the law and don't get enforced, and have been up for more than 10 years filming on public land, and all of those people, they don't enforce this law. When I asked the officer, how come I'm in your seat making 12 films and doing my best to be non-commercial, and these people have been doing hundreds of films, thousands, and you've never stopped them? And they basically said no one complained about them.
Yeah, that's
we don't have the resources.
Enforcement. They have a discretion. They can enforce rules and laws on whoever they want to, as long as they break them, right? And even try if you don't. I'm just saying, like, there's only one cop for the park.
Agreed, but
they can't go after everybody.
But if 98% of the people that are filming on public land are allowed to do so without consequence, then how does the judge's ruling change much?
So here's how it changes much. So let me go back and finish what I was saying.
I could say this: the big Hollywood productions don't get away with this. It's too obvious.
Well,
and
it's
now
not
they have
even
a free
too
pass.
obvious. It's still violating. So you're missing part of this, which is the principle, the Organics Act that created the authority and the property ownership and the whole body that goes of law that goes around our public lands. Okay. I mean, so what is not going to happen legally is that we're not going to have Hollywood rolling into Glacier National Park on Saturday to roll out 100 people and run skidoos all over the place. I mean, the point being, they still have the law that they are enforcing on their own property there, meaning it's public, but it's Park Service property, is to protect the resource. They cannot avoid that. Yeah. So if and the Forest Service is the same way. Now, what does that mean for us? Like independent, small, if you're running around with a camera, you got a couple guys on Forest Service, on BLM in the park, is there's not an impact. I mean, it's kind of a reasonable observation and a reasonable decision to make as an enforcement officer. On the other hand, if there are 5 of you and you're fucking something up, trust me, you are going to get cited, assuming they see it and assume, so your discretion, your issue about who does it get enforced upon is still real. But if you're wrecking the resource, I don't care if it's 1 or 50, you will get in trouble for that if you're caught or if you're reported and they follow up, if you've broken those or violated any other law. So that's where I think this goes a little haywire, is this does not mean all bets are off, roll camera, bring in the freaking horses and chariots. We're going to have, we're going to do Hidalgo B
Gladiator
in Glacier National Park, right? That's not real. So,
right. I do see.
Because you're going to get busted for something else, right?
Right. It reminds me of some of these cases, high-profile cases, where there was a big wall climber vlogging his adventures, and they would basically make little films, film 5 days a week and publish stuff on their channel, and they had all these people following, doing it for a long time, and then they decided to scribble their name onto the wall in Yosemite or something. And then they filmed it, right? And it was part of the video. And it was just some jackwagon that was there or something like that in the group that then the feds came along and said, where's your film permit? And also here's your fine for desecrating a national park and this land that's protected and so forth. And so, like you're saying, maybe they don't fine them for the film permit, but you will be in trouble for damaging the land.
1 or 100. And the other part of that is if you're, and this leads into what I think is the most important part maybe of this discussion, is how do we think about it? What's going to happen going forward? What is the next step? And that is, understanding what your impacts are and operating within sort of this, the moral and the ethical boundaries, right? So if you're, if you go to a national park, for example, and right now, I know Glacier the best because I live here, right? And they have a dozen winter closures in that park, and they're based on protecting wildlife. Now, I'm still going to violate the law if I go in there. If I go there and do anything, I'm violating the law.
Whether you have a permit or whether you film,
whether I have a film permit or not, it is irrelevant.
Whether
and so
required.
There still is a limit, there's still rules, there's still boundaries. But going forward, I think you have to really be smart about what you're doing. I think if you show up and it's August and you're at Logan Pass in Glacier National Park, a third of that area, for example, in Glacier Park, is closed in the summertime. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, that is a resource protection issue. Mm-hmm. And the reason to understand this a little better, even in the forest or on BLM land and other places, is you have to know where you're at and what you're doing. Because now you can't just go to a place that's closed and start filming, because you're busted for that.
Right. But I think, Tony, that's kind of like saying, it's kind of obvious in some sense because you're not supposed to hunt without a tag. You know what I mean? You can just because you don't need a permit anymore, maybe for an area or whatever for filming, you still have to follow the laws of the land.
But here's where it goes haywire. The permits used to be available so you could do those things.
True.
So now there's no system for it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that's terrible. I'm just saying there's give and take.
There's gaps.
The whole thing is going to get rebuilt, and people should expect at some point to be dealing with a permit application or at least a discussion.
So and I agree with that. I think a few people thought from my post that I felt like all regulations for filming should disappear, and that whether someone makes money on land or not, they shouldn't have to pay for that use. That's not what I meant with the post or my opinion on it. It's more nuanced than that. One of the things that is stated in this document from Congressional Research Service that we were going over the other day, and I'll share that with the public with the link. It kind of goes into detail on all the proposals that have flowed into Congress over the years and some of the history associated with this particular law. And one of the things that's in there is that it has the proposed fee structures that have been sent to Congress, and I think we should get into that and kind of discuss. But one thing that's interesting is these things, they were asked like as far back, it says like in 2013, Congress asked the Department of Interior to fix their law. This law they have been told to fix this law for a long time. And I'm not trying to, disparage any department or our government in any way. I mean, there's a lot of things going on, but I'm just saying this has been around for a while. There's been a lot of proposals put in place. In the meantime, I agree with the judge in the sense that she's saying, look, you're infringing on people's First Amendment right. And since 2013, nearly a decade, they have been asked to stop doing that and to fix the law so that it's narrowly defined to meet constitutional muster. And yet they haven't done it. So when she says, all right, permanent injunction until you get this crap fixed, I'm kind of like, if that's what it takes to get them to finally fix it,
sure,
I'm happy about it. Even
that's
if
that's how things get changed. I mean,
obviously because it hasn't been able to.
These other laws, I mean, all over the place. That's how it works with any regulation. No, somebody's always there to push them, and thank God at some level. Right. Whether you like the regulation or you don't like it, like wherever it is in the universe, somebody had to be pushed to say, I drink that water. That water should be drinkable. Get your freaking gas tank out of it. Right? Some people think that was great because they could dump their shit in the river. Other people say, no, that's where I get my drinking water. So however you look at it, that is really the way things get changed is through, putting pressure on the public. Administration of a public agency through the law, and private enterprises saying, or even public saying, hey, you're infringing on my rights and you got to stop doing that. Or in many cases, they want a judge to tell the government to either do something or stop doing what they're doing. Yeah. Because there's so much. I mean, like if you want to go, there's so many rules and laws. We can't develop programs that implement all of them, even though the government, even though they're supposed to. They pick and choose every damn day.
So this permanent injunction, one of the things that that I think I confused people with my post was this is strictly for national parks, which we can't hunt in anyway, right? Most of them. And so people were like, you're making people think they don't need a permit to film hunts anymore, and that's not true. And that wasn't my intent to make people think that. And I tried to clarify, but yes, her ruling is for national parks. Now, I think her logic can be applied to all of the public lands and the permits. The idea of the constitutional overreach is the same whether it's national parks or not. So I think that this, like you said at the outset of this discussion, it's very possible that this this causes everything to change because they know it's a problem. They've known for a long time that this is an issue, and they've actually sent proposals forward over the years to address it. And so let's kind of go over some of those proposals.
Yeah.
And were you involved in some of this, Tony?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a little bit. Obviously, behind the scenes, where we're talking with other organizations, lobbyists, that sort of thing, with like helping to provide information that can then be used to build regulations, because these regulations are as good as sort of the people who helped craft them, right? Like the more we know, the more we can tailor this to what really happens, right? So looking at these laws, the regulations that the Forest Service and BLM were trying to consider over the years, and basically trying to determine like what's the right number of people to be together and not probably have an impact, right? We're going to guess here at educated guess, maybe 1, 3, 5. Where's the number? And some of these proposals came up with 5, like 5 or fewer. We're going to the fee. It's just a fee issue, right? It's like, again, this is important to understand because we're talking about 2 different things, really. One is a permit, and within that permit is a fee schedule. And there's 2 fee schedules. One is how much does it cost to administer the permit, and how much are we going to charge them to have it, right? So like one is, can we make money on them? The other is, can we pay our staff, right?
Yep.
And so what they had determined, at least the Forest Service was involved in this. This is Interior Department and Ag coming together and saying 5 or fewer is one of the proposals. 5 or fewer, it's $200 or it's $75 a year. That's your fee. You just pay the yearly fee of $75, and you and a camera and 4 guys can have at it. Now, what that means is fee schedule, not permit, right? You still have to apply for a permit.
Yes.
Because in the national park, they have to determine whether or not where you're going to do your activity and what are you going to do. How does that impact the public? Are you using models and props? Are you doing something in a place where we cannot allow you to film that activity in the parking lot at Logan Pass? No. So just because there's a fee and just because you paid for it doesn't mean you're going to be able to go wherever you want and film whatever you want to film.
That was what I was telling you yesterday, that given my current financial situation, I am like, keep the fees the way they are today. Charge me $20,000, $25,000 a year. I'm at a break-even point with my business where I can cover those fees and move forward. For me, the issue isn't the cost at this point. For me, for 90% of the people out there doing similar things, it probably is. But for me, it's the permit process. It is a disaster.
That's why I said early on, like, this is where we're going to have to move to, is how do we develop a program that is workable? And in my experience, having worked at the highest levels of our government, it is a huge challenge to figure this out. Just to administer a program of this scale, whether or not it's cost effective is not even an issue. But to administer a program based on this ruling and what we see happening today, I don't know how they're going to do it. I mean, I'm just saying, from a hunting, when it comes to like, how the hell are you going to do this?
So from a hunting perspective, I actually see a pretty simple solution. The government, our wildlife agencies have already determined where you can hunt, where you can go with a certain tag you acquire. And they've already set a lot of ground rules on what you can do in those hunting regulations with that tag and that license. So from my perspective, from a hunter, that all the work has been laid down. Can I walk in this place and can I do the hunt and can I do the things associated with hunting? Yes, the regulations say under these conditions I can go here, here, here. I can't go here. I can't use an electronic motorcycle in here or a bike. I can't use like it's all established. So to my way of thinking, if you're in that 1 to 3 people camera crew or one person, one camera, one tripod, and you require your hunting license and you want to film that hunt, why not tie that process for example, like you're saying, the fee schedule's over here, but the
Mhm.
process is over here.
Mhm.
Why not say, yes, given the low impact that this one person and the one camera has, and the fact that they've acquired the license and tag, they're free to film that activity because the license and tag authorizes them to do the activity. So you just say, I have a hunt. I drew this tag. Here's my tag here, and I want to film it. I have one or three or 1 to 5 or less. Give me my film permit.
Sure. And so I think what you're describing is part of, I think if I'm looking at the future and I'm trying to figure this out, my first is I don't really know how it's going to work, but here are the things to think about. And one of them is what you've just described. Now, can I envision a way where they say, okay, one guy and one camera, no fee even. I mean, because we have that in some places already, right? There's no fee. I don't need a permit just to go into the national park and take pictures.
Exactly.
The hurdle, or at least the decision matrix, the criteria, let's say, is, am I using a model or a prop? And am I going somewhere that is restricted, or am I impacting the public?
What do you mean, am I using a model or a prop?
That means, am I bringing something into this situation that isn't already there? It's complicated because I'm the model and the prop sometimes, right?
Yeah.
If I'm going to film myself, I'm the model.
Yeah.
I'm the prop.
Right.
I'm the GoPro guy, right?
Uh-huh.
On your own. You are it. So I think there's something with that. I'm not sure what it is, because I could still, they're infringing on my First Amendment right according to this law, or this judge, if they're going to charge me to be there to film myself, right? I can see where they got an issue if I'm filming 2 or 3 other people, or I'm filming a gun. I mean, there's an issue. But if I'm just filming myself, like, how can you even, so anyway, that's kind of a separate thing in a way. But what I'm getting at is, I think there's a way to make some exceptions for certain things. And I think that's where part of the challenge is going to be, is in determining what's commercial. Sorry?
Yeah, and it says in here that there's actually a lot of proposals in this document we talked about. There's a lot of proposals where they actually said, if you already have a permit that authorizes you to do a certain activity, then you have 1 or fewer or 3 or fewer camera and people, then you don't need a permit. And so, or they say you need a $200 annual fee, or a $250 per month fee, or whatever it is. But they're
going to have to define the parameters of that specifically.
For sure, because if they say, like, you want to go hike this trail, you have to buy a permit to park at the trailhead, right? And so that permit to park at the trailhead and to go on that trail to hike, you have now paid for, and to authorize that activity. Why not an auxiliary permit to then authorize you to film that activity that's already been approved through the permit process?
I think they're going to have to very clearly lay out exceptions. This is where things get really, I think, unfortunate, is that in order to administer this program properly, which includes determining who this applies to, it includes determining who needs a permit and who doesn't. It includes how do we enforce it? Is it understandable? Is it enforceable? Is it equitable? You have to define up front what's allowable or what's not allowable. I think you have to kind of get into that. This isn't, because how are you going to know if I'm coming into a jurisdiction and I say, well, I don't know if I really need a permit, because what I'm going to do is build a fire out in the middle of nowhere. What if they say you can't do that under restrictions of resource protection issues, and whether you're hunting or not? I mean, I'm just saying, I'm throwing stuff out there. Like, they're gonna, and it gets slippery, because then you kind of have to think of all the million things that can happen. And I think we need to get closer to some exceptions at the low end. There seems to be some agreement around this 3 to 5 number. There seems to be some agreement that it can't be so onerous that you can't get a permit, that you can't move around the landscape
Well,
within
that's
a
what
first unit.
that's
I
kind
mean,
of
there's
what the
lots of agreement here.
that's
So
what the judge is kind of indicating is, look, and to clarify, for example, for this national parks issue, if the federal government wants to remove the permanent injunction, it's permanent. It's not temporary. They have to go to a higher court and run the new law changes through the court, and the court has to say, yep, this rises above constitutional muster. Your proposal is narrowly defined, and now we're going to remove the permanent injunction. So that permanent injunction does not get changed or reversed or eliminated until the government changes the law, rewrites it, and actually gets it approved as being constitutional.
I don't know what the redress is. I didn't read that. I also think that there's another step possibly, and that's an appeal.
There is an appeal, and if they appeal by mid-April, they have 60 days to do so. Then they can, then we have to wait and see what the judge says the second time. Okay. However, I do think that the law, as we stated before, is so broad sweeping and over inclusive. I don't think they can win it in a court of law. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a judge. I don't know, but based on just sort of my common sense,
just go with what they're putting out. I mean, that's where I'm at right now. I'm looking at the Department of Interior's website, commercial filming and still photography, and it says right here, following the recent court decision, we will not be implementing or enforcing the commercial film portions of this law until further notice. That means accepting applications, issuing permits, enforcing terms and conditions of those permits, issuing citations related to permits, or collecting cost recovery or location fees for commercial activities. That's right on their website.
And one of the things I said that really angered a few folks was, I said, people said, Brian, but you have to make sure people understand this is only national parks. And also, this is not for photography. This is only for filming.
Yeah, right.
And all of that is true. And I said, yes, you're right. That's what the judge said. However, I said, there's two ways to change law. One is through Congress, through your legislatures, you get laws changed on the House floor. Now, I don't have a lot of faith in our Congress today. And these laws have been on the books for a long time. Since 2013, they've brought stuff in. There's a list of the 112th Congress, the 113th, the 115th, the 116th Congress, which was the most recent one. These things come to the House floor and they die on the House floor. None of them get passed. So my faith in going through the legislative process and Congress is pretty much zero. I don't think that process will actually drive a change to these laws. So my comment to my audience was, I'm prepared at this point to go through a legal process of making this also apply to the Department of Interior and also to the Department of Agriculture. I feel like, okay, I can take the same with an attorney. I can sue them in civil court the same way Gordon Price did, and I can say, look, here's the precedent that's been set. Some case law has been established, and you can have a law challenged and changed through the courts. And all I was saying is, if I'm paying $20,000 a year in annual fees for permits for a process that I think is broken, I wouldn't mind taking those dollars and putting them into attorneys to then get the law changed. And I think that the precedent set by this judge for the national parks probably would win in a court of law for the other public lands that were not included in her narrow ruling, because she's only ruling on the stuff that was in the court case.
She does reach out to all of DOI and including Fish and Wildlife. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Like she doesn't say anything about about agriculture. So everything within DOI, except for Indian country, probably too, might be another one. Reservations, so might be another issue. Probably is. But and as I mentioned, I talked to the Forest Service this morning, And I think from what they're saying, like they're backing up, right? They're like, what are we going to
Yeah.
do? And they're having their folks all get their heads together. Right now, I mean, going forward, it costs $0 to call your senator or your House member or send them a note.
Hmm.
Say, hey, we
Sure.
got to fix this. Right now, we're kind of happy with what happened here because it makes sense. It's reasonable, but we need some certainty as businesses going forward. How are we going to implement this program? Put some pressure on those politicians, maybe, because the regulatory agencies want to fix this badly. Like
Hmm.
they do not want this hanging out there. I mean, especially if you're an enforcement guy. Imagine if you're being out there and like,
Oh
I mean,
yeah, I felt bad for the guy that the
yeah,
agent that I was working with. He's like, "Look,
terrible.
Brian, I actually like what you do. I didn't write the law. I just follow the law.
Yeah,
I'm just here to enforce it." And he's like, but he said, "Brian, if you don't like the law, all I can say is go get it changed."
yeah.
And there's two ways to change it, like I said, through courts, building out case law,
Mm-hmm.
or through your legislature. And I mean, both simultaneously, two track. I don't mind that either. I'm just saying, and I wouldn't mind if there was a coalition of hunters and outdoor filmers that came together to sort of help with this, whether it's through case law or through the legislature. But I feel like no one's really talking about a lot of this, by the way.
Well, in our small universe, they're not. But if you go, there are other organizations that are like leading the charge on this. In
I
Press
honestly,
Photographers Association is one of them. Like they have always been out in front on this.
yeah,
So that's another like they're leading on some of this stuff. They've got
okay,
deeper pockets and they have resources and like but nothing is stopping any individual from from bringing this up because our politicians are not leaders. They're none of them are leaders. They're all there are is they're moving with the pressure. And this is
hmm
an important issue, particularly for the West, where we've been arguing for I don't know how many years now that outdoor recreation, that hunting, fishing, hiking, these are the future of our economies, right? And so there's nothing more important than addressing these kinds of issues. It affects everybody out there filming. It affects everybody out there with a camera, an iPhone. It doesn't matter. So this is super important. And I think with that, we can push these guys a little faster, both from an administrative standpoint. So meaning whoever's in charge can tell their people to work harder on it. Whoever the law is, whoever the Congress people are,
hmm
there needs to be some movement on the law. I mean,
So,
in the
so
meantime, though, just in the meantime, it's kind of the Wild West in a sense.
yeah,
If you're us, if you're
yeah,
Hollywood, you're still going to get smoked.
yeah.
But if you're kind of a couple of guys out there and you're just, I mean, I don't see how, based on what I just read on the website, you're going to get in trouble. I just don't see it unless you're breaking some other law, unless you're screwing something up or you're pushing
Well,
little kids down in the parking lot. Like,
well, yeah, and that's what I felt like I was trying to say. It's her ruling. It's the situation. So a lot of people that care about public lands feel like I'm raping the land and not paying for it. And I think that's unfair because as Americans we all pay for the land. I think you need to look at it like the judge said from a what did she say? A personnel slash equipment issue and its impact on the land. And when you
yeah,
look at a personnel issue, and I'm my own cameraman, and you look at my equipment issue, and I have one little DSLR camera this big, um, and you analyze that, you have to say to me, you have to say, well, from her perspective, that impact is very minimal, and we should analyze that. Now, she also said that the government should, as it states in the law, or it says that the government needs to get a fair return on your
mm-hmm,
personnel slash equipment impact.
mm-hmm,
Now, some people don't like to hear that, especially in the hunting space. I found that's not what they want to hear. They want to hear if you make any money at all, you need to pay a whole bunch of money back. They're not saying you need to pay based on your uh, personnel and equipment impact, they're saying, I think you're making money and you need to give a whole bunch of that back to the government.
Yep.
First of all, I don't
revenue
understand.
Model. They have a revenue model.
Nobody says though, yeah, we should give the government more money because they use it so well. Like it surprises me. It's almost like that comment is more born out of jealousy of what I might do for a living than it is based on how they truly feel about how we should handle these things, or they have a passion for public lands and they want to make sure that they're taken care of. And I agree. Now, I think where it's sticky is, I think it's wise to not get hung up on the impact, for example. So if you were to charge based on, like you said, revenue model and how much money Hollywood makes on a film, man, it could be a lot, but they don't. They charge them like $250 a day, $500 a day, $750 a day for filming. They charge me $250 a day. There's not a big difference between the big dude and the little dude in fees. And I think that's really weird.
Well, they've tried to address that too. I mean, the thing that you're going to post a link to, you're going to provide this commercial filming and photography sort of congressional research service report, which people should read. It has a little discussion about that. It's like, there needs to be some equity here. So in some cases, the fees they proposed went down. In others, they went up for the reasons you just described.
Yeah.
It's not fair to charge me $8 and them to charge them 100,000 or whatever. Like it needs some parity.
Yeah. And I think, like you said earlier, it should be based on your it should be a fair return, I guess. It's a great way to put it, but at the same time for what you do, but that for using the resource and how you impact it. Now,
I think the only fee that there ought to be is one that covers the expense or at least offsets the expense of what you're doing. And the only way to determine that is through a permit. That's the problem with some of this. Like, I feel like so let me give you an example, national park that I have. I got a permit to film a brand new car it was a new Jeep. It was the Compass. When the Jeep Compass came out, I did a photo shoot for Auto Week in Glacier National Park. One guy, one vehicle, one driver, and a passenger. Mm-hmm. The permit process from a business standpoint was more than I made. It cost more to go through that process than they paid me for the shoot. Okay, we're talking 4 hours, but it was I had to bill them for, like, let's say it was 30 hours to get the permit. So I billed them at $80 or $100 an hour to get the permit, right? Mm-hmm. Then the permit was $150 to apply. Then it was $150 for the day. Like, all of that was like, it was like $1,500 to go stand on the side of the road and shoot the Jeep Compass coming down, going to the Sun Road. Zero impact. Nobody knew what we were doing. We caused no risk. Now, on the other hand, if we had said, and this is where the permit and the discussion comes in, if I would have been up on the top of Logan Pass and during the middle of the day or in the morning when there's a million people there,
and you want to stop traffic,
that's an issue. Yeah. I'm stopping traffic. I said, look, I need this car by itself on the highway with this beautiful mountain in the background.
Right.
Now, I'm one person, one car, one driver, and one passenger. Should I have a permit if I want to have that situation happen? In other words, if I want to have that car with no traffic on that road with that mountain, do I need a permit for that activity?
Well, you're going to stop traffic. I mean,
right? Or not, or you just wing it and throw your kid out there and, like, I'm serious. So these are why I think it's going to be complicated and important to define what is allowable and sort of like when do you need to fill out the application, right? So that I and you can sit down and look at it and go, okay, I'm going to the Forest Service. Wow. I mean, it's just me and my buddy, but here I'm going to fly a helicopter and I'm going to stop traffic. So I need to apply for a permit. Because if I just stop traffic and fly a helicopter, I'm going to be in trouble.
True, but I think that you can have auxiliary rules in place for that. So if you say, yeah, you're free if you're if you're three or fewer camera personnel, tripod only, like it says 1 to 3 camera and tripod only. Okay, then and this is in this fee structure that they've got here. Then it's gonna cost nothing, and you can just go and do your thing. Now, when it comes to things like, well, I want to fly a helicopter or fly a drone, and I want to, bring, a motorcycle in here and do X, Y, Z. Well, some of that's already covered, Tony, based on the rules of the area you're in, right? So, yes, you can freely get the permit. You just have to follow the other rules that are part of that public land use.
But a permit gives you the protection and the right to obstruct other activities, right? So if I want to do that, then I can get a permit.
True, but
otherwise you're
right.
You're risking what you're doing by creating a problem for the public. So I want a permit.
Yeah.
And so I need to know, like, okay, this is
what I
here.
want to do.
Right.
But I still think if you don't want to do anything extra beyond the basic film, you can just be exempt from the process. That, like you said earlier, some level of exemption for some basic activities.
Yeah, absolutely. So that, I don't know any other way around that, because you can't have everybody. So pretend that they rewrite the law and they're trying to figure this out. It's like, okay, well, determine. So we may not charge you a fee at all, but in order to determine that, everybody who's filming has to fill out an application. That is impossible. That is so impossible, because that's kind of the way it is now.
One of the legislations, it says in this document here, in the 116th Congress, which just closed, last week or something, it would amend this law to allow film crews of 5 or fewer to pay an annual fee of $200 for filming on federal lands and waters. That's their proposal.
Right.
So I would spend, with my being myself filmer and one guy, I would spend $200 to purchase a fee to purchase an annual permit, I should say, to allow me to film. And it says the proposed $200 annual fee would differ from the agency's proposed fee schedule, which would charge film crews of 5 or fewer with more than a camera and tripod $75 per day. So they're just talking about the differences here of the old law versus the new law. And so they're saying, hey, an annual fee, you pay $200 if you're just 3 or fewer, or it's one guy and a tripod, you're good. $200 and you can film on federal lands. I think if it's curious, I think that it would be that would get compliance at a level that right now is not happening.
Yeah, but they're still going to have to address what the fee is for, because the judge said you can't just charge a fee for being there, basically. Like, it's not okay to just say, you're here, you have to pay, which is the revenue model. Mm-hmm. She's left the door open for charging for compliance with a law or with the regulation, right? Mm-hmm. So I think they got to flesh that out. Somehow you can't just say it's arbitrary. Where'd 250 come from? Where'd 200 come from? I mean, they're going to have to say, because for me, I'm calling bullshit on that too. Mm-hmm. I'm saying, no, I'm 5 or fewer. You just give me the friggin' permit, because you have to do nothing.
Right.
You're doing absolutely nothing. I'm not impacting anything.
However,
I'm just like me and 3 hikers
back
on
to
the
trail. Revenue model.
Why am I paying $250 even?
True. I mean, but
what am I paying for?
I mean, I hear what you're saying. Still, that would be a far cry better, even if they did it, than what they have currently.
I don't know how they're going to get around it unless they somehow figure out how to bill you for the operation of the program, which they might have to do. But I'm not conceding. I'm not even saying, well, I'd be okay with $75, because I wouldn't be until they can prove to me and a judge that what they're charging me for doesn't violate my constitutional rights.
Well, I think that there's a lot of people who are like, who look at, so I buy a license and a tag, non-resident, for Montana, and it allows me to go to Montana, and I spend, $1,000 for this. I go up there, and I do my hunts, and then I come home. I I pay taxes, so I have access to public lands. So the question is, and a personnel and equipment impact, if I walk in there and I'm my own personnel, so I technically don't have any personnel, and I have one camera, the question that I had was, okay, is that impact worthy of a fee?
Right.
And I look at it, I'm like, not really. I mean, anyone who has a phone and is doing the same thing,
and maybe so, doing it better than you.
But what happens is, this is where people get angry with that, is they say, but Brian, you're making money. But Brian, you're making money. And I'm like, but I'm not causing any impact. So where do you draw the line there? Well, and the judge is basically saying, look, whether someone makes money or not really isn't the issue here.
Right.
From the government's perspective. You can't say you don't get to speak and your freedom of speech is taken away by virtue of this process, this fee structure and everything else, just because he makes money. And also, that's really onerous on a small business or an entrepreneur who's trying to make it on $1,000 a week doing a vlog, or $1,000 a month on a vlog, and he's got to spend, $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month in permits. It's not feasible. So I think it's a bad idea to say, yeah, so and so makes money, so they need to pay a whole bunch of it. I think it's important that we allow small businesses to grow and to thrive, and whatever money they make goes back into the environment, the economy, and so on, based on their ability to add value to the public.
Yeah, and I can see. I mean, on the other, so I can see the budget office, once these rules will get written, which there will be rules written, we'll have to address that. I mean, that's where people can weigh in on comments, is the budget office actually looks at these issues. How does it affect small minority? How does it affect women-owned? How does it affect, a small business, blah, blah, blah. But for example, if you have a place like Glacier, which arguably is overrun at this point, like the numbers of visitors are higher than what the system can reasonably accept over the long run during the summer months, right? Which is when people are there. I can very easily see having a very sort of going back to this like tapestry of rules and regulations where everywhere you go, there's a different rule. So I go to Glacier and they said, wow, our permits are $800 because we have to build a system that is so complicated that if you're filming on Logan Pass, here's what you're going to have to do, or we're going to charge you $500, or here's all the rules, or, so I think that we're in for some very interesting, solutions based on location. That's the other part of this too, which is it doesn't work. Like you can't put the Capitol Mall on the same plane as the federal wildlife area in Montana, which sees 8 visitors. Yeah. Like they're not the same.
Right. No, and where hunters, and I agree with them in one sense. Okay, so one thing is a lot of hunters want their hunting areas. They don't want anybody to film a hunt in their hunt area. They don't want any publicity brought to the place that they hunt, and I understand that completely. And so from their perspective, they're like, put as many film laws in place as you can to make it so people can't even film at all. Okay. Yeah. And my frustration with that is it's a bad idea in the sense that the only way hunting stays a thing, the only way that conservation is really noticed or that public lands are noticed is by these sorts of things, by having content created around it, so that someone like me can express my ideas and the adventures I have in a positive light, explain conservation, animals, empower other people to go out and use the resource as well. And I feel like there's a abundancy mindset or a scarcity mindset that you can approach this with. And one is that, hey, it's a resource for all of us. Let's educate as many people as we can, and let's promote the ethic that we believe in a most positive light that we can. The other is put so much regulation in that no one can film. And that unfortunately that won't end well. That won't end well. Plus you're silencing someone's freedom of expression in order to manage the impact to the number of people that can be in an area. And I said this on the thing. Look, if you're going to manage from a hunting perspective, we already have mechanisms for managing the demand for tags, and that's tag allocations.
Mm-hmm.
And so to add a layer where we say we're going to make filming outdoor films really hard, that way we can manage tags, the demand for tags, that's really weird. It doesn't make sense to me.
You could regulate them at the same time.
Yeah,
you could
I
say
know.
There's 5 mule deer film permits available. The rest of them are to Joe and Schmo. But if you don't draw the one that comes with a film permit, you're hosed.
Yeah, exactly. I'm
not suggesting that. I'm just saying, right?
Right. And so I think of it in terms of it's a bad idea to there's solutions that make sense that are fair or fairer, but I think it's a bad idea to manage demand by shutting down speech regarding the activity. I think.
Well, I mean, but again, you can't escape the fact that these agencies have their marching orders. So, I'll give you an example where, there's a place in Glacier Park that became so famous. There was a guy that photographed it in the late '80s, and he's dead now. But he made this one location famous in that it was a place that every photographer that was doing their thing wanted to go to this place in Glacier, and they wrecked it. And so they closed it. If you see modern photographs from this place now, they were taken outside of the law because it's now closed. You can't go there even just to visit that spot because it was so degraded by so many morons. You could go there in the morning and there'd be, this the most delicate alpine environment, and there's ruts and trails and trash, and it just stood up, right?
Well,
so I mean, to me,
and I look at that and I go, and I think that saddens me, and I'm not sure how to handle that because I don't like the idea.
They shut it off for everybody. That's how they handled it.
I'm not a big government fan. Okay, I think smaller the government and the less power they have, let the private sector do the best it can without their involvement. I'm much more that kind of proponent. However, I do think that we have to have some government regulation. It's important because the private sector can go rampant as well. But it's for example, one of the things that I do in my films, Tony, I film the best I can to not show anyone any landmarkers. Right. I do the best I can not to show landscape shots. I try to bring people on this adventure, but not show them where I am.
Right.
And I didn't used to, but once I saw how my film could impact an area, I was like, oh no, 100,000 people watched this. And now, I had, 50 people show up in this little spot.
Yeah.
And the spot's no good. And some people have been hunting there for 20 years. And I just ruined, or 50 years, and I just ruined their grandpa's hunting spot. So and I've seen that. So I stopped saying, this is the state I'm in, this is the unit, and this is the tag I got. I stopped filming in a way where you would see where I'm at. I stopped putting topographical maps in my film that show terrain. It's insane. And I did that because I'm like, you know what? It's not fair to people who have been hunting those places for years or that research those places and put in the time for me to just blow them up. Right.
Yeah.
And it's in my best interest. I love those places. I've researched them. I got into them. I don't want them to blow up for my own use. It's my honey hole too. Yep. It's my hunting spot.
Well, God bless you, but I mean, I've been at this a long time, and that works for you to sleep better at night. It doesn't work on the landscape.
Well, I don't think
there's 10 guys that are going to come up.
That's what I was going to say.
Period.
Is there's a trend out there. Yeah. Though this is not the trend. What I'm doing with my content is not the norm. The norm is the opposite.
Yeah.
And so I think it's created a lot of animosity toward outdoor hunting filmmakers because a ton of people are like, dude, all they do is screw up our hunting spots. They bring 50 guys, into my area from New York. What are they doing here? Those California a-holes moved in. and I don't blame them. So I think that there needs to be some mutual respect between the filmmakers and the people who also use that. And so I've done my best to try to do that. And I think it's the right thing to do. And I get people that get mad at me because they're like, I just want to know the state. Come on, man.
I mean,
I just want to know the unit. I'm not asking you exactly where in the unit.
Yeah,
and it's like,
but everybody that goes down the path you're talking about, the path of sort of some sort of internal fortitude where you make a decision like, this is a precious place, I don't want to screw it up, right? Like, so you've done that. Every example I'm aware of where a filmer or a photographer comes in fresh gets to that point if they last.
Yeah.
Right? If they last 2 or 3 or 4 years, they're going to exploit every goddamn thing they possibly can. Not all of them. I'm just saying this is the trend and this is the recent history until they get to the point where it's like, wow, I want to close the door behind your back act enforced now because I've now made it. And so I want to protect this for everybody. And I'm like, dude, when you got here, there was already 20 guys that had left because it was fucked up. And now you're telling other people to not screw it up in the way that you just screwed it up. My point of all of that is 100% conservation ethic, morality. Like, we need more people to understand the value of those places and those things. And yet we still need to be able to talk about them because they're meaningful. Like, it is a real challenge. And I appreciate your work in that way, and mine too. I mean, I've probably given up as much access to more. I've given up more financial stability in terms of turning people down to take them to learn about areas, to have them pay me a lot of money to do a lot of cool shit because of my own values. So that's it. That's my stump on that. Yeah. I mean, we see it. I tell you what, I could list the names of guys that have made it on Instagram. They made it because they have 50,000 followers. And now, instead of last year telling everyone where they're going, they're telling everyone not to tell anyone where they go.
Right.
And it's like 5 years ago, I sent you a message and said, dude, you are going to wreck it. Stop. And they basically say, dude, mind your own business. So I'm not tooting my horn. I'm saying we're in a long line of people who have been trying to protect these places for a long time. And the more we can talk about the importance of these areas and the ethics that we carry and the morals, I think the better. I think young people learn from that.
And I agree. But I think that there's a problem there in the sense that it's sort of like just in the hunting space altogether, right? There's hunters who make us look good.
Yeah.
And there are hunters who shoot us in the foot. And unfortunately, they have the right to get a tag and hunt just like I do. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't mean to say unfortunately. I just mean to say, they are equal with me. And if they want to make hunting look really trashy and negative, and they want to heartless, and they want to just exploit the animal and a trophy and all of that, and preach maybe the wrong ethic, it's a continual struggle. It'll happen that way whether you're in kayaking, mountain biking, jeeping. It's going to be in every walk of life because people are just people. I think it's a bad idea to try to have the government come in and legislate morality on limit these things, because it's just I want to be able to film and present hunting in the way I think is important and maybe sway people to the same viewpoint, even non-hunters over time. I need to be able to have the right to do that. But when I get the right to do that, that means the next guy has the right to come along and do it badly. And so I don't, I think at the end of the day, it's the cost of freedom. It's sort of like the Second Amendment. I want everybody to have a gun that wants to have a gun. I want people to have the right to bear arms to protect themselves. That the cost of freedom there is that someone might have a gun and they might murder somebody with it.
Well, they will.
There might be a massive school shooting. right? Though that's the cost of freedom. But I'd rather have the gun and deal with the cost. I'm just a big proponent of freedom at the end of the day, and I'd rather take the consequences that come with freedom than the so-called benefits of your freedoms being taken from you. And to me, the right to speech and to say all these things and to promote your idea, it's a freedom thing. And I feel like the cost of that freedom is that someone else might take that same freedom and say things you don't like, or promote areas that they hunt in that will ruin a spot that's yours. Mm-hmm. I just think it's a bad idea, though, to go the other route and take away freedoms. I'll take the cost of freedom every time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't really know how to address it other than, like I said, my tendency has been to become part of the solution more often than not, and it impacts me financially a great deal. I get called a lot to take people to do things that for example, one of the biggest ones is in the spring, people want to go photograph grizzly bears, they want to photograph mountain goat babies, and I can do that. I've done it. I know where it's at, but I absolutely will not accept payment to do it, and I won't take you there. That is my commitment to the delicate resource of grizzly bear cubs and baby goats. Yeah. When at that point in their lives, they have a less than a 50-50 chance of living. And so the more I can do to help ensure that they survive, then I sleep better at night. Honestly, that's what it's about for me. I'm going to bed knowing, you know what, I just turned $5,000 down to help Joe Schmo get a couple pictures of some grizzly bear cubs.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
Yeah. So, no, I hear you. And I agree with that.
Sometimes you don't need to film your hunt. I mean, that's the other thing, right? Like sometimes you just go like, hey, I've been at this a long time now. And I do it all the time now. I don't take my camera certain times. I just go, you know what? This is me and Frank. We're just going out.
This year we filmed this year we did not film a number of hunts. One, because we didn't have the permits, but then when we did have permits, we're like, yeah, we just want to do this. Yeah. And what's frustrating about that, though, is you take an animal and you take a trophy shot, and technically I'm not supposed to post the picture, but everyone else can go on a normal hunt and take a trophy shot with their deer and say, look what I did, and this was awesome, and share their experience on Instagram. And I'm technically not allowed to do so. I was told to take all my photos down that were taken without permits. It's like, wait a minute, like I can't even just be a normal Joe anymore. Yeah. Like, and just go hunt and share it on Instagram like anybody else.
Right.
And that's where I say the over-inclusivity is involved there. And
the consequences of turning your hobby into a business. Yeah. I mean, there are real issues.
Well, there are, and I have hunts that we're on the books this year where we're just not filming them. They're just ours. Right. We're just doing them because they're places we want to go that we value. And
if people that listen to this thing, if they're young guys out there that are trying to make it and do stuff, I think the future is in the high ground. I mean, honestly, it's sort of like the gal that wants to become a model, right? Like the gal that wants to become a model shouldn't start out as a peeler, on Instagram. Like, don't get naked right out of the freaking deal there. Right. Like, right. Go ahead and be a little classy and build something first. Like, build something that's worth having, that people want, not just because there's 1,000 people behind you that want to wreck something. So lead a little bit, like create something valuable, create a brand that people can be proud of and that will share. But if you jump right out there and just be like, okay, I'm just going to blow it all up, like, you're not going to last. That's not a long-term plan. And I don't care whether it's investing or whether it's shooting elk and deer. Like, that game has not lasted I can't think of anybody who just literally goes out and, as dumb as they are when they're immature, maintains that level of dumbness forever. Right. Like, we wisen up a little bit. So I'm, people should just think about that a little bit. And, I'm okay, film it. But like you said, don't show that one pinnacle or that mountain range in the shot where it's like, okay, you Unit 35.
Especially if you have a big audience, a big reach.
Yeah.
It's like that's I've tried, and I think a lot of I hope it continues that way because
Yeah.
And people are like I'm very aware of the number of people that consume what I'm doing, and so I try to be very careful about it. And I think that this trend will continue. I think that more and more people are going to start doing the same as they realize their impacts. And in the meantime, I'm probably going to start doing some more private land things simply to so I can have a fire.
Yeah.
At night and film it.
Well, it's kind of the same with me. Like I love to go to places like where they don't have grizzly bears because I can sleep better.
Yeah.
I don't even need a fire. I'm just like, okay, grizzly bears are off the list. I'm going to take a nap.
Yeah.
And I'm going to rest. Like here you got one eye open and you're always ready to have a confrontation. But if I go to anywhere south, down the warmer climate part of the United States, or I go out east just a little ways where there aren't grizzly bears on the Missouri River out in the breaks. I'll leave my sandwich laying next to my bedroom, right? Like I'm going to cook, I'm going to eat, like it's all happening right here. I'm not going to have to run 100 yards over there to turn my egg over. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, that's a big deal for me. I love grizzly bears, but I love being in places where I don't have to worry about it.
I hear you. Well, Tony, thanks for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And I'll put some links for people so they can kind of reach out to you if they want to get in contact. And anytime you get some more news or anything, send it my way. I'd love to have another discussion down the road let's
pick it up in like a year and see what happens. Like, because within a year, shit's going to happen. I don't know what exactly, but I think at 1 year, we might revisit this. And if there's anything cool or fun, we can poke fun at it. We can agree, disagree, whatever.
Talk about the experiences I've had this year in permit purchasing, and so forth. I just paid for another permit
you did?
Like 3 days ago. So, and then I'm like in the process of trying to get another permit because I'm getting them way in advance now. Yeah. But now I don't know what's going to happen when I go to try to get a permit. Strange. So
well, everybody ought to go online, do a little searching, talk to your local reps and see what they're saying about what they're doing, because at least I know the Forest Service is they're kind of up in the air right now. I mean, they haven't taken their program offline as far as I know, but they are considering how does this impact us. And if you're looking at Interior Department, go look at what they're saying. Like they have shut it down in some places. So all I can say is if you're going to go there and you're going to be there, be smart about it. And I think most of us are anyway. So I just feel like we're moving in the right direction. So I appreciate the discussion with you, Brian.
Yeah. Right on. Well, thanks, Tony. Have a great day, and we'll stay in touch.
Take care.
Thanks, brother.